Okay, this is going to sound controversial, but some of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned in my life didn't come from heroes or role models.
No, they came from the shadows of history, from dictators, gangsters, and conquerors, figures who are basically defined by their ruthless ambition and frankly unimaginable cruelty. People whose actions we should never copy, but whose stories hold lessons we really can't afford to ignore.
Now, let's get one thing crystal clear right up front. This is not about glorifying these people. Not at all. Their cruelty, their crimes, their destruction, that's all undeniable. But history is messy, you know? And if you look closely, even the absolute worst figures reveal some really uncomfortable truths about power, influence, and human nature itself.
So let's start with our first theme: power, media, and influence. We're going to look at a dictator and a gangster who, even though they operated in totally different worlds, both became absolute masters in the art of control. First up, Benito Mussolini, a tyrant, the man who plunged Italy into fascism, silenced anyone who opposed him, and left his country in total ruins. But, and here's the uncomfortable part, he was also a media pioneer. I mean, long before social media even existed, he figured out how to use new technologies like the radio and film to basically control an entire nation's thoughts.
He literally weaponized communication, shaping public opinion like it was clay in his hands. And that reveals a lesson that's just as true today as it was then. Whoever controls the message controls the people. In the wrong hands, it's a terrifying tool for manipulation. But in the right hands, it can be used to inspire and unite.
All right, next up, Al Capone. This guy ruled Chicago through blood, fear, and bribery, a true empire of crime. But then, during the Great Depression, he did something completely paradoxical. He opened up soup kitchens that served 30,000 meals a day to hungry, desperate people. Now look, it was a calculated move, for sure. It was a way to build loyalty and public support. But it goes to show even a monster understands the power of perception. And it just reveals a fundamental truth, doesn't it? Power can be used to terrorize, or it can be used to provide. And that choice, well, that's what ultimately defines your legacy. This leads us right into our next section, ambition's double-edged sword. We're about to see how the exact same intense drive that can fuel greatness can also lead to utter destruction. We'll look at a conqueror and a kingpin.
Let's talk about Napoleon Bonaparte. We remember him as this power-hungry conqueror whose wars killed millions and basically redrew the map of Europe through bloodshed. He left a whole continent in chaos.
And yet, out of that very chaos, he created the Napoleonic Code, a revolutionary legal system that completely modernized Europe. He reformed education, infrastructure, government. It just goes to show you that well-designed systems can actually outlive the destructive campaigns of the person who created them. The lesson here is pretty profound. It shows us that while ambition can destroy, a powerful vision, if it's backed by a solid structure, can outlast even the most flawed leaders.
Now for the kingpin, Pablo Escobar, a ruthless drug lord whose cartel unleashed just unimaginable terror and corruption all across Colombia. An empire built on cocaine and fear. But in his hometown of Medellin, he was seen as a savior.
He built homes, schools, and soccer fields for the poor. The same man who destroyed countless lives with one hand was giving hope to forgotten communities with the other. The lesson here is that influence is never neutral. The exact same raw ambition that fuels destruction could, if you just point it in a different direction, build nations.
Okay, our final case study is maybe the most extreme example of this whole idea. We're calling it conquest and connection, and it's all about the unintended legacy of Genghis Khan.
I mean, this was one of the most brutal conquerors in all of human history. Entire cities were burned to the ground. Populations were slaughtered. Whole cultures were just erased. The scale of the destruction is hard to even wrap your mind around. And yet, from that ocean of brutality, something truly unexpected emerged: order. His empire was so vast it needed communication, so he created one of the first international postal systems. He ruled over so many different peoples, he had to promote religious tolerance. He secured the Silk Road, creating this stable artery of trade that connected the East and the West like never before.
Just think about that for a second. Out of absolute carnage came connection. His violent conquest, completely unintentionally, laid the groundwork for the globalized world we live in today.
It's a deeply uncomfortable truth, but an essential one.
So, this brings us to our final section. Wisdom in the darkness. What do we actually do with all these complicated, uncomfortable truths?
We certainly don't admire these men. Their hands are soaked in blood. But we can't just ignore them either, because if we do that, we miss the whole point.
History's villains, they show us patterns. They show us how power really works, how influence spreads, and how even deeply, deeply flawed human beings can leave a lasting impact. We can study these patterns of human nature without ever, for a second, admiring the actions themselves.
And that, right there, that's the key. The whole trick is to learn the lesson without repeating the mistakes, to recognize the strategies they used for control and destruction, and then to think about how those exact same principles could be used for connection and for growth.
Because, let's be real, the world isn't shaped only by saints and heroes. Sometimes it's the villains who change it the most. And if we're smart, we don't just glorify them or condemn them. We study them. We learn from their darkness so we can better understand our own world.
So, I'll leave you with a question. Which historical villain do you think left behind the most surprising lesson? Let me know down in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to see what you all think. Thanks for digging into these uncomfortable truths with me.